O'Reilly. You've got questions? O'Reilly Auto Parts has answers. Need a pro you can trust? We've got that too. No matter what you need, our professional parts people have the training and expertise to help you do things right. Deep automotive knowledge, just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Hashtag no music, no intro. We have a very, very special episode of the Saints Block Party podcast that we're recording Thursday night. The man, the myth, the legend himself, Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints is joining our podcast. I was telling Ryan, I was like, man, I don't know why it's taken us so long to get Ross on. Like, we've been doing this podcast for 3+ years now. And this is our first time having Ross on. Yeah. Ross used to live in SoCal where I live, and we didn't live super far away from each other. Now he lives in New Orleans, so that's on me that we didn't link up before he moved to Louisiana. So I apologize, but just out the gate, Ross, we just want to give you some love. Just thank you for just gracing our podcast and coming on it. And man, this is dope, man. Like this is really dope and really special.
Please, man. For me, I get to wear the badge of honor here. You know what I'm saying? Like I've been wanting to come through and kick it with y'all and chop it up with y'all for a long time. So I really appreciate the invite. Looking forward to being able to do this. I just want to say real quick, because it's a Saints podcast, right? But like, look at this melanin though, bruh. Look at all this melanin. I love it.
You still I love it. I had it all synced up to say it, bro. But of course, Ross being the guy that he is, he had to steal it from out. I ain't mad at you. I know you too far ahead in the game, but I just wanted to say, like, even before we start talking about football, Saints, like look at this, man. Like, you have three men of color, black man. Yes, we're talking about the Saints, but it wasn't too long, and I know it kind of caused like a little like a uproar when I brought it up on Twitter. But I think it was like last year's Senior Bowl, and certain picture went out on social media of like people who were covering the Senior Bowl for the Saints, and I said something about it because at that point the only people in the picture that are people of minority were Josh Hendricks and Juan Walker. I don't even know if Ron was even in the picture, and it just stood out to me as like, man, like this is New Orleans Saints. And this, keep in mind, I'm saying this is nothing against people who cover the Saints or anything like that. Right. All I was saying is that you have a team in New Orleans, a highly predominant culture and population that are black. And like the reflection of that picture post Senior Bowl, I don't know if it was last year's Senior Bowl, maybe it was 2021 Senior Bowl.
I think it was. I think it was like February a couple years ago. So I think I was in LA for the Super Bowl.
That sounds about right. And I just said something about it, and it as it does, it ruffles feathers and whatever. But like if you support us and you've always been a big advocate for us, and we just gonna say. We're going to keep shit real, right? This is who we are. We are not tied to any type of media credentials. We're never, ever going to be tied to any type of media credentials. And that's okay with us. But to just have this podcast happening it's meaningful and it's impactful. And it's anyone who's listening to this who may be a person of color who are younger and might not think that, getting into the media industry isn't for you. Like, don't listen to that. It's like, don't listen to that.
It's all yours.
It is.
It's all yours.
You got to make it what it is. Ryan and I do this. This is not our primary job. We do this as it became a hobby, but now it's become an actual business for us. Ross's media credential, working with Locked On Saints, like there's so many opportunities for people out there that want to get into the business of whatever it is. It doesn't have to be sports. It could be whatever it is. And then I just wanted to point it out because I thought about it earlier and just it really hit home of how cool this moment is.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, homie.
And we're all bald. Yeah, we're all bald too. Just
yes, yeah. That's because we're black.
And I wanted to add the main reason I never came at Ross about getting on. You always working, bro. Like every time you dropping a video, if something happens, you got a video out like 15 minutes after. I was like, I'm not even about to burden this man with coming on our podcast.
No burden at all, man. Happy to do it. But yes, I do try to be there and be there at the moment that is necessary for sure. So I hear you. I appreciate that.
And we want to like anyone who listens to Locked On Saints or just like all you see from Ross of his his content talking about the Saints. Like that is like the genuine person of just being a good dude. Like that's him. Like Ryan and I met with Ryan or with Ross the first time last year at the Senior Bowl, and all you see that comes through his videos and his podcast, that's just who Ross is. And this is an industry where whoever someone is may be who they may portray on a camera may be completely different than who they are in actuality. And that's not Ross. That he is who he is. He's a good dude. We are going to cut it up. And of course, like I was so excited, stoked about this podcast. Like we don't talk about training camp. There's some hope. There's some optimism, and it act in the most Saints-like manner. Just boom. Ryan and I had a very extensive podcast about this earlier this offseason when they brought Jon Gruden in earlier. Like I was just irate, and it was just so just like this team doesn't get it. And, DA kind of brushed it along, blah, 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 whatever. And then it's like, well, you thought that was going to be it. Nope.
Right.
Jon Gruden, reported by Jeff Duncan, will be visiting the team tomorrow on a Friday. And it's just one of these things where, and I don't want to completely say it's just under this regime type of thing in terms of like their thing. But I've said this before on this podcast, and I kind of stand by it, is that, Dennis Allen kind of feels like he needs to win now, right? Like he has no recourse but to win, and whatever, minuscule of morals that may be associated with it may not be like attached to it, because it's like if we can get this person in, this ex-coach that knows Derek Carr and can help us win, then we're gonna do it. I know you did a segment about it. Just chop it up with us in terms of just when you saw that news, what stood out to you.
Yeah, this is an interesting storyline, and it's one of those storylines that I never try to shy away from stuff like this, because look, like this is important stuff, and like this is kind of that intersectionality of being a sports fan, but also feeling safe about being a sports 100%. Fan. And sometimes that's like, especially for women who are NFL fans in particular, like that is such a tough conflict that they have to strike. You have to fight to be a fan sometimes as a woman, and you shouldn't be in those situations. And so with this is kind of just another one of those reminders of that. I mean, like, let's be real. Like Jon Gruden effectively resigned in disgrace because of the emails and things like that. I don't care how long ago the emails were. The emails were the emails, right. And that's just what that is. Like if you behave a certain way, it doesn't mean you get to get away with it. There's no statute of limitations on racist, homophobic, and misogynistic stuff. Like this, you would think not. Right. And so I get it 100%. And like my personal feelings around it are kind of like, what's the point? Like why would the optics of this be something that is worth it? Because ain't no way in 2024 at the beginning of the year, we're looking back and going, man, thank goodness they brought Jon Gruden in for 4 days. Right. Like that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? And so I don't fully agree with the Saints strategy here, but I understand what it is they're trying to do. It's kind of like the old Chris Rock thing. I'm not saying I agree, but I understand, like that whole thing. And so when I look at it from that perspective of it, it's exactly what you mentioned. Like this is a team that wants to win. And if they feel like this is going to, that's going to give them this little bit of an edge to get them closer to that. Derek Carr believes that his best years were with Jon Gruden. And the Saints system isn't too far away from what a Jon Gruden system has always been. You can't bring Sean back to help him out. Drew is not interested in coaching, it seems like. And so who are you going to go to, right? You got to go to a guy like this. And he's the only one that's available. He's the only one that you can tap that's not in the league right now, affiliated with another team, and say, hey, come in and work with our quarterback. And so that's what they're doing. They're doing it because they feel like it's going to give them an edge over on the offensive side. And personally, I disagree with it, but I understand what it is that they're trying to do. I just don't really see how a couple of visits with Jon Gruden is really going to put this team over the top. Like, I don't think any of us are ever going to look back and go, well, that was Jon Gruden right there that did that. Like, if the New Orleans Saints offense turns around, we're giving that credit to Derek Carr. And if the offense turns around, we can give some flowers to Pete Carmichael too. But I don't think that we're going to be handing anything out to Jon Gruden.
I'll say this, I'll let Ryan give his thoughts. Man, this second visit on a Friday, I know how NFL teams are sometimes. I wonder, and this is no inside knowledge at all, right? I've been too busy to even ask Saints questions. But is this like a softening up of he's not affiliated with the team right now, but would it completely shock you of just like, oh, Jon Gruden's being hired by the Saints as like this special, offensive coordinator, senior, and like it wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Not one bit. Not one bit. Wouldn't shock me at all.
I think the only thing that may be holding that back, I don't know if it would hold him back because, there are coaches that have sued the league and been employed at the same time. But I know Gruden does have like a case going against the league saying they tried to get rid of him by leaking those emails or whatever. But I guess I just keep wondering, like, are the Saints kind of being used by him to kind of get his toe back in the league? Because, face it, the dude loves coaching. He loves being a part of the NFL in some facet. Media, on the team, whatever. He has to be a part of it. So I'm wondering if he's kind of using the Saints just to
get his name out.
Just to be around, like just to get his name out. Look, he's just kind of soften the blow. And then, maybe another team will come call it or whatever. I wonder if that's the case, because I know DA has like a ton of respect for Gruden for some reason. And look, he was a good coach in his time. He has all the feathers on his cap, so I can understand. And we know how these NFL coaches, a lot of them think. 80% of them probably see nothing wrong with the emails. They probably like, what's the big deal?
Probably close to
My
like
dad
90.
Talks like
that's
that.
probably close to like 90, bro. Like I think that's understood.
Right, So, let's just keep it buck here.
Right.
But I'm just wondering because it just can't all be, we just trying to help Derek Carr. What are you doing? Like, what is Jon Gruden doing there that's helping Derek Carr right now? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. It could be true. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that I think there is some truth to it. I'll be honest with you. I think that there's some truth to it, to how it does help Derek Carr. But I think that I don't want to call it cosmetic, but that's kind of what it feels like. Like it's a cosmetic help. It's not something to where like all of a sudden, like the one thing that you could say is that, okay, Jon Gruden can help Derek Carr translate the offense that he had in Las Vegas to the offense that he has here in New Orleans. But Derek Carr can do that.
Absolutely.
Like, he has. Like we've watched him throughout these training camp practices get in and out of the huddle. Like there's no cadence slip. There's nothing like that. Like he's done a good job with all that. And so I would say that maybe that's a place where Jon Gruden could help. But what I really think that it is that it's almost just like hey, here's another resource and here's another length that we're willing to go. Like we'll take all of this criticism and we'll take all of these bad optics and we'll take all the people asking these questions and some of that because we're bringing Jon Gruden into our facility, but we're doing it because it's going to make you more comfortable. And so it's kind of like how Sean Payton just recently went after Nathaniel Hackett to kind of back up Russell Wilson. Here's Dennis Allen and the New Orleans Saints doing something that maybe is going to get them some backlash, but they're not worried about the backlash. They're worried about how does this make our quarterback feel? And can this help to make the quarterback more? And then they get to also say, like, hey, look, we don't care about any of that. We're not worried about any of that. Block out all the noise. We're here to help you win games. Like maybe there's a little bit of a play in that.
I 100% get that link. I just want to bring up if that's what the link is, and I could 100% see why that would be the way. Did anyone think of like the timeline of this? Because 8K, like I'm going to be real. AK just went and met with Roger Goodell yesterday. Someone in the team thought it was a good idea, and this is not me advocating or being a fan of Jon Gruden coming in. It is what it is, so I have to speak on it. Someone thought that AK meeting with Goodell on Wednesday, followed by 2 days later, Jon Gruden, the man that resigned and is suing the NFL, is coming in 2 days after that. Did they not even like maybe schedule like a week later or like the week before? That's some. Well, look, we're the bad boys of the NFL type attitude is what that is. It's the bad boys. That would be like something like Sean would do, but like Sean, but Sean at that point had like earned that respect to do some like bucking the trend towards the league. This is DA, bro. You don't have a winning season on your record so far, bro, and you're the star player of the offense. You're hoping that maybe he doesn't get suspended, or at the most he maybe gets 4 games. But you're like, all right, go talk to Goodell on Wednesday, but we're gonna bring in someone that's suing you 2 days later. It's not smart. It's not smart. Anyway, I don't want to. I won't stay too long on the Gruden thing because I could make another whole podcast out of it. And this is not what we're doing. Training camp. Obviously, Ryan and I aren't there. Ryan and I utilize your observations, John Hendricks' observations about what you're seeing, players who are standing out, things you're noticing, rookies, all that. So I'm just going to throw just a general training camp question at you.
Yeah.
What offense, defense doesn't matter. What's been like your biggest takeaway in this year's training camp under Dennis Allen with this year's Saints roster?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that it's very, very clear that this team at this point this year is much better than it was at this point last year. At this point last year, we saw a lot of misconnections, and I'm not talking about misconnections about like incomplete passes and things like that, like the way that we would generally think about it. I mean, like, we saw a lot of false start penalties throughout training camp. We saw a lot of these like jumping off sides penalties during training camp. We saw them have to reset a ton. We saw maybe like missed cadences or issues with, snap counts and things like that. Like that was a big thing that we saw throughout a large portion of camp. This year, it's been entirely different. And it's not only been entirely different just because it's been Derek Carr, but like Jameis hasn't had any of those issues. Jake Haener hasn't had any of those issues on the quarterback side. We've had some, centers not snapping the ball and the rest of the offense kind of goes. That happened during OTAs at one point to where like if the whole offense moves except for the center, everybody knows whose fault it is.
Yes.
And so like you kind of get that. But there's been a couple of those maybe little miscues and things like that have happened here and there, but it is not at all to the extent of where it was last year. And I do think that the execution and ability of this team to be able to move its offense has proven to be a lot more fluid and a lot more I'll say consistent over the course of this training camp than it was at this point during last year's training camp. And that's not to say that the defense hasn't been performing as well, because the defense just dominated like 2 days ago during these training camp practices. So it's a lot of back and forth, a lot of, to borrow the phrase, like iron sharpens iron. I know it's cliche, but it's a big part of what it is that you want to see from guys like Marshawn Lattimore and Michael Thomas battling and all these other things. So I think the thing that I would say is the biggest takeaway for me so far is that this team is better than it was at this point last year. And so hopefully that leads to week 1 through week 18, this team being better this year than it was week 1 through 18 last year.
I don't know if you're able to kind of recall last year, but it seemed like to us on the outside, it seemed to be like I don't want to call it lackadaisical, but it was just kind of like, we're the New Orleans Saints, we good. Yeah, Sean Payton gone, but it's the same team. We all good here. Everything fine. And it just I don't know if I saw the urgency. And that could have been something I was projecting, but that's just how it felt. Compared to this, I'm sorry, I'm fighting with my light right now. Compare that to this year, do you see any difference? Is it kind of the same? Like, how do you feel about it when you look at just the urgency, how they're battling offense versus defense during the periods? How is it coming off to you?
Yeah, I think you see a lot more intensity and urgency. So I think it's a little bit of both. And then, so I'll give 2 examples of that. On the defensive side, the intensity and the urgency comes from just talking trash. I mean, every time this defense does one thing right, which they've been doing a lot of things right, but every time they do one thing right, the opposing offense is hearing about it for the next like 6 minutes. And I'm not even talking about just like while that team is on the field. I'm talking about their like second team is on, and the first team defense is still shouting over the second team, offense and defense to let the first team offense know we just ran y'all off the field.
Love that, man.
So I think that like that kind of urgency and that kind of intensity is really good. Demario Davis is a big leader of all that. Of course, Demario Davis is a man of God, but he will talk some trash on that field. He is wild funny when it comes to all that. And over on the offensive side, I think the sense of urgency comes from their precision and their attention to detail. So we watched a couple of days ago to where Michael Thomas and Derek Carr missed on a route. And so after practice, they ran that route and hit it and drilled it and drilled it and drilled it and drilled it until they were both. And then they would come together and they would say, okay, how are you seeing it? How are you seeing it? What do I need to do differently? How can we adjust? All right, why don't we do it this way? Blah, blah. And then they run it again and they talk, and then they run it again and then they talk. Man. Same thing goes with Chris Olave. We saw it all the way back during OTAs. Same thing goes with Rashid Shaheed. So there's just a high level of expectation and standard with Derek Carr and with all of these receivers and all these pass catchers. I don't think there's really any exception to that like every person, if they miss something during training camp, they don't just say, well, we missed that one, which is kind of what happened last year, to where it was like, dang, hang my head. And then we go back and we do the next snap. They run it and drill it and drill it and drill it. So that when they come back tomorrow, or they run that play again, if that happens on a Tuesday, they run that play again on a Friday, their expectation is that when we do it on Friday, we're straight. Like, we got what we need and we'll be able to get it done. So I think those are just two smaller examples, but I do think that they're pretty solid examples of just how this team is treating itself and its standards a little differently this year.
Man, it's encouraging to hear that as a fan. It's also encouraging. Like, Ryan brought this point up with Derek Carr, is just that this is nothing against Jameis or anything like that. He just brings a sense of just being like a professional NFL quarterback to a team. So I like the signing of him. It just has brought like a sense of calm over the team, but also not just a calm, the willingness to say, like, we can't rest on our laurels. Like, we have to be good to win. And so as a fan, that's encouraging to hear. Let's going over to the defense. It's kind of hard to get a sense of things as they're going against the same players kind of continually. But I did want to know that it's been brought up about the pass rush or lack of pass rush and how that is a concern heading into the season. It seems like there's been some encouraging things that, that's been reported about the defensive line and the pass rush. How are you seeing that from your observations of your attending of training camp?
Yeah. I think a couple places where you've seen some good play from the pass rush have been guys like Carl Granderson, Tonopasio, and
Hey,
and Peyton
it's okay,
Turner.
bro. You can say it.
I know it. It's just, it's so crazy because that's what I was waiting for. That's exactly what I was waiting for. So and Peyton Turner and I say that with a smile because I'm genuinely happy for Peyton Turner. He's just one of these dudes that's like, he's such a good dude, like in the locker room and to talk to, and he gives you good stuff and he knows the game super well. He's really smart, all that stuff, but just hasn't been able to be out on the field, whether it's because he was a healthy scratch, which raises questions of like, are you in shape?
Right.
Like, what's going on? Even when we were at the Senior Bowl and we spoke with Jeff Ireland, the two things that he highlighted about him was that we need him to be available, we need him to not be injured, and we need him to be in shape. And those are the things that he mentioned, like just straight up. And so I think that when you come out of that into this offseason, the very same offseason, that's kind of a what do you call it? Like a shot across the bow or whatever. Yeah. Of like letting him know, like, we see you, you know what I mean? And I think he's responded really well to that. We've had 7 days of training camp so far. John and I have either written or typed his name every single practice so far. And so it's not just a situation where he's flashed, on, every other Tuesday or whatever. Right. It's that he's showing up consistently every day. Now, he's not winning every single rep or anything like that, but no one does. And so I do think that he's done a lot in the run game. He's done a lot in the pass game as a pass rusher. And so we just want to see that continue, because always, and y'all know this better than anybody, what always happens every single training camp is that the guys that have been around for a couple years start out really fast. And then those younger guys close that gap about the second, third week, fourth week of training camp, when they start to pick up the playbook, when they start to get, comfortable in their system. And so can he keep that distance? I think is the big thing that you're looking for. So those three in particular have been good. I didn't mention Isaiah Foskey, but I want to clarify that it's because he's learning a new position. And I don't mean that they're like moving him to, slot corner or anything like that. I just mean, he was a guy that was kind of a 2-point stance, edge rusher during his time at Notre Dame. Now he's kind of been moved inside on a 3-point stance, or not moved inside, but moved to the side. Kind of a 3-point stance, run stopping, like 4-eye technique. And so he's lining up over that inside shoulder of the tackle, and that's kind of been his run stop focus. That's what they really want to see him continue to develop. They know he can rush the passer. They want to see if he can develop as a run stopper. So I just want to highlight that. Like, I didn't mention him. That's why. And then the defensive interior has been pretty impactful too, especially guys like Nathan Shepard. And we're seeing more and more flashes from Brian Brzee as well. He had a great interior move. It was kind of like an interior swim move over a guard, rushing down like right up the middle on Derek Carr, forced an errant throw by Derek Carr that almost got picked off by Pete Werner. That combination of plays is exactly why interior pressure is so important. Huge. That's why the Saints went against the grain when it came to defensive tackles and went for a guy like Brian Brzee, because he can provide that.
Right. I also wanted to ask you about Jake Haener, man. Like, it's just something I've been keeping an eye on. I've been watching every clip I could find on YouTube, Twitter, and everything. And, man, the dude just looked comfortable, man. Like, the ball's coming out. He has a nice, like, compact stance.
Yes.
Ball comes out quick. There's a suddenness to his game that, reminds me of Drew Brees. Not saying he's Drew Brees, but it just has just the way they play.
Yeah.
And you kind of got to play like that when you're that size.
Right.
Yep.
How's he really looking? Like, does he look like somebody that could develop into a QB2, a backup quarterback, maybe a spot starter, just from what you're seeing right now compared to, say, some of the other backup quarterbacks they had back in the past, the younger quarterbacks that they try to develop?
Yeah, those quarterbacks. I mean, like, and I'll just be real. Like, Jake Haener is head and shoulders above guys like Ian Book and Garrett Grayson and some of those younger guys they brought in and tried to develop. I don't know if those were just like Sean guys and that wasn't really his position in terms of drafting and stuff like that and identifying that talent or whatever. But like those guys didn't pan out. And I think one of the things that's so different about Jake is, you mentioned that like tight throwing motion that he has. He gets the ball out so quickly. And a part of him getting the ball out so quickly isn't just the motion. It's his mental processing. It's I know where I'm going with the ball, right? There's no hesitation. Ian Book, we would watch him a lot of times, and he would just feel pressure when pressure wasn't there, and he would scramble. We watched it all that Senior Bowl that we were at. He did that entire Senior Bowl. I don't know if he ever threw a pass during Senior Bowl practices when we were there that year. And so now you're looking at a guy like Jake Haener who just plays the game differently, who has been working with Derek Carr as his mentor for years and years and years. Derek Carr said he gives his phone number to every single Fresno State quarterback after him, and Jake Haener's the one that's used it the most. And so, those two have been such a big, or rather Derek Carr has been such a big part of Jake Haener's journey, and now they're teammates, which is, a really cool story too.
Right.
Yeah.
But, Jake's favorite quarterback growing up was Drew Brees. His favorite team growing up was the New Orleans Saints. So it's, you look at his throwing motion, the stuff that you said to where he's got like those little intricacies that kind of remind you of Drew. It makes perfect sense because that's the guy that he watched growing up, that he replicated his game after. So it's exactly why.
And I've always said, like, if you're a up and coming quarterback, and like say you're not the super athletic, Anthony Richardson type. Like, I would study the shit out of Drew because he was so consistent with his mechanics. It was unbelievable. Him, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, but Drew was. You could go to just Google Drew Brees throwing, and like every picture from like 15 years, it's like the same exact emotion.
And Drew had to even be that more so than Tom Brady and Peyton Manning just because of the stature. Tom Brady and Peyton Manning had like a little margin of error. If they weren't like perfect, they could maybe overcome it with their height and how big they were. Drew didn't have that option, bro. Like, I remember going to my first Saints game and seeing Drew. Man, was my first Saints game the 49ers playoff game? That might be my first.
Oh, no.
No, it wasn't. That was not my first Saints game.
And you went back?
No, that was not my first Saints game. My first Saints game was against the Falcons, the Katrina year, where Falcons missed the field goal, but the Saints had a holding penalty on the field goal attempt and they re-kicked. That was my introduction to in-person Saintdom, and here we are. But just seeing Drew in person play, it was just like what? Like, they allow him out here on the field? It was just it was a crazy thing to see. But have you? I'll say this, and I'll ask this follow-up question with Jake Haener, but then I had a question about the offensive line. Do you think, and obviously preseason is going to play a huge factor into it, could he potentially show enough where they feel like he's ready for the quarterback to position this season, and maybe they see if Jameis can be traded elsewhere for a team that may need a veteran quarterback presence for whatever reason?
It's interesting, right? That could potentially pop off. We've watched the Saints be on the opposite side of that the year that they traded for Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater had that great preseason, and they had Sam Darnold and all these other things. And then the Saints had Tom Savage and somebody else. So they traded for Yeah, exactly. And so that's why they traded for Teddy
completely
Bridgewater.
forgot about
You and me both, Ryan.
And then a year later, Teddy Bridgewater goes 5-0 in their system,
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And so, you know, the Saints could be on the opposite side of that or have something like that happen on the opposite side of it, to where if Jake Haener outperforms or performs really well. And I think that, and by the way, just to kind of like blend these two things together, I think where Jake Haener is, and the way that I see him, is like a top end QB2. Right. He's, you know, you look at Chase Daniel, you look at Mark Brunell, you look at Luke McCown, you look at these guys that have been behind Drew Brees, Teddy Bridgewater, right? You look at these guys that were behind Drew Brees and that, you know, were the clipboard guy that when the defense was on the field, they're going through the photos together and they're looking at things. Jake Haener and Derek Carr literally look at defenses and talk about defenses and have a shared language that's 100% the same. You know, because that's the guy that's been teaching them.
Right.
And so if you're going to have, you know, what's better than one Derek Carr? Maybe two Derek Carrs. And so you get that mind, right, mentally, that can kind of have that out with them. And so I think that, you know, you see a team out there that maybe is in need of a quarterback, or maybe there's an injury or something like that. Right. You know, how comfortable are the Raiders really with their quarterback situation or something that, yeah, like if the right price comes along, it could make a ton of sense. But I think you're right. I think the preseason has a big bearing on that. But nonetheless, in 2024, I think he's your QB2. Far and away, he's your QB2. And then Jameis moves on, hopefully, to another opportunity.
Right. Following up my question with the offense, have we seen the last of Andres Pete?
I don't think we've seen the last of him. But I will tell you this that I think is really interesting. Anytime that we see Trevor Penning, and I don't care if it's individual drills, if it's first team reps, if it's, you know, whatever it is, right? Whenever we see Trevor Penning, it's always James Hurst to his right. It's always James Hurst at left guard. So I'm talking about even if you see Trevor Penning working on, you know, pass sets to where he's going from, you know, his hand in the dirt to, you know, getting his hands up and being ready. James Hurst is at his right, on his right side, doing that with him. Never Andres Pete. So what I'm really curious about, and I'm talking about this is before the quad strain too. Like we've watched this all camp so far. Even if Andres Pete's been on a ramp up, he can stand next to Trevor Penning and put his hands up. You know what I mean? Like they can work on hand placement together and everything like that. And I don't know if it's because James Hurst has the left tackle experience. And so it's a little bit of like a mirroring exercise to where Trevor Penning's working with somebody that played left tackle last year in the same system and what it is that he's doing. Or if it's like, hey, get comfortable with this guy standing next to you because he's going to be standing next to you. So I'm really interested to see what that is indicative of by the time that we get into the season. But I will say this, that with Andres Pete missing time, James Hurst has gotten a lot of those left guard reps. And the thing that I keep saying is that if James Hurst shows the Saints that he is starter quality at left guard and Andres Pete's still dealing with injury concerns, they should listen to what James Hurst is telling them. Right.
Yeah,
and I don't think that. And so, you know, we'll see if that ends up happening or how long Andres Pete misses with that quad train. It's been two practices already. We'll see if he's back out there this weekend. But it's, you know, the longer that he's out, I think the more opportunity James Hurst gets to say, hey, this is my spot now.
Exactly. And look, even if you think Pete is a better player than James Hurst, availability, man.
Huge, man.
Availability is such a big part of it.
Available. So that plays such a huge part in the evaluation. So I'm keeping my eye on that. I find that extremely fascinating. Especially considering Pete taking a pay cut this offseason and basically on his like last year deal.
Yeah, he celebrated the end of his contract and all that. Like
that's going to be fascinating over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and remember too, like also they did pick up Cesar Ruiz's fifth-year option, so both of those guards are potentially on their way out after this year. Cesar Ruiz had one of the best run blocks that I've seen in all training camp. I can't remember who it was on, but it doesn't matter because they don't have a number anymore. He laid out whoever that was. I can't remember who it was, but he put that dude in the dirt.
Bullying works.
And so I think he's just got a lot of confidence. You know how it is, right? You have an injury. There's the physical part of returning, and then there's the mental part of returning, of being comfortable with your body. And Cesar Ruiz has just shown 100% that like he's very, very comfortable. Like we asked him, how does it feel to be out of the boot? And the first thing he talked about was, you know, his Jordans. Like, yeah, I got my Jordans back on. Like I'm Gucci, I'm good. And so, you know, he has just made sort of that mental recovery already. Yeah. And I think that plays such a big part in your game as somebody that's able to come back there. And you know how the Liz Frank injuries are too. Like once, especially when it's a complete break, once that's kind of healed, it's almost stronger than it was before. So I think that's why a lot of guys have some, I don't want to say stronger than it was before, but it feels better than it does. And so like, that's why you see a lot of guys come back from those Lisfranc injuries and have especially clean breaks and have a lot of confidence in that injury as they move forward. Taysom Hill last year is a good example of that.
O'Reilly.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Yeah, that's right. Taysom did have the same the injury prior season before.
He just came back.
Last game of the previous season.
Yeah.
Yes,
a mutant, an absolute mutant of a player.
Dude's wild.
But you brought him up. Like, how does he fit into this offense? Because me and Ryan have been bringing it up, and we have no idea how he fits into this offense.
About Taysom?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's still under center. I mean, we're seeing a lot of these second team snaps, second team drills, if you will. I struggle to say that because they've really been mixing up. Like first team, second team, third team conventions kind of gotten thrown out, and you're seeing like Rashid Shaheed play with Jake Hayner in the third team snaps and stuff like that, which I think has value. But when it comes to Taysom Hill, like we're watching him and Jameis most of the time alternate reps at quarterback during the second team periods. And so I think that's his spot. I think that's where they keep using him. And look, they're going to say all this stuff about how they want to utilize him at, receiver more and all those other things. And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that they do want to do that. But we all know where it is that Taysom Hill mostly, is able to impact the game most reliably.
Yeah.
And it's as a runner from under center, particularly in those short yardage situations. And I don't think that that's going to change. I think he'll continue to be there. I know a lot of Raiders fans who have found their way over to Saints podcasts and stuff like that have kind of questioned like, whoa, wait, they're going to take the ball out of Derek Carr's hands and put it in Taysom Hill's. It's like they took the ball out of Drew Brees' hands and put it in Taysom Hill's. They will take it out of anybody's hands and put it in Taysom Hill's because Taysom can do things that neither of these guys can do. And that's exactly what one of the things that Derek Carr said at one point was like, look, I can't do the things that Taysom can do. So I'm happy to share the field with him and have him come in and kind of run those plays and things like that because Taysom's not running. Derek Carr's not running a QB power anytime soon. No. And so I think you see all of that from Taysom that's probably still going to be his role, and no amount of tight ends being added to the roster, I think is going to change that because none of them can step into that role in particular. But I do think that getting him involved, I'm talking about once or twice a game, get him a target in the passing game. I think that does enough for you to where as a defense, you have to honor that when he's in the huddle.
Exactly. And look, speaking of Taysom Hill as a runner, he did average, 6 yards per carry.
That's wild.
But then you add in Jamal Williams.
Yep.
Invigorated Alvin Kamara. And the young gun, Keandre Miller. Could this running game really be a serious thing, man? What are you seeing as far as the run game?
Yeah, I think so. And look, I think the Saints defense has played really well against the run. So this kind of skews a little bit. You're kind of trying to project, okay, if they weren't going against a good run defense, what would have happened there? They're really disciplined in their run fits.
So I think that was a big question.
They've shown well throughout training camp. They're in position. It's so hard to evaluate. You can't hit nobody.
Right. You can't take it to the ground. Yeah.
Right. Like you can be in position all you want, but if you don't make that tackle, you don't make that tackle. Right. And that's unfortunately the truth that we learn weeks 1 through 4 in the NFL, where every running back goes wild. Yes. And so, but what I will say is that, for the Saints run game on the offensive side, I think what you're seeing is a lot of versatility. Jamal Williams has slimmed down. He went from 230 down to about 217. Some of that's the New Orleans Heat. And then the other bit of it, is that he's preparing for a more multiple role, kind of something more akin to what he did in Green Bay when he was the change of pace back for Aaron Jones back then. And so he's, catching passes. He's running, outside. They're running stretch runs with him. They're running stretch runs with Kendra. They're running these guys up the middle. They're doing everything with him, which is very different than, I shared that run chart last year of Alvin Kamara's runs in like October or November or whatever it was. And it was just all so condensed. It was like, what are you doing? Like, we know who Alvin Kamara is.
It was so frustrating to see that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now I think when you get these guys that kind of have this versatility to where you can put them on the field and say, okay, yes, you can run up the middle, but also you can do all these other things, that helps to kind of discuss. It's the Mark Ingram and Latavius Murray effect, right? Like, you didn't really know just because they were on the field that it was going to be a run, because they worked them into the passing game so much. Even though before they were in New Orleans, they weren't really passing guys. They weren't receiving guys. And so I think you'll see that same thing with Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller, and that's going to help to open up that run game a little bit. Because you think about, just from a schematic standpoint, if you've got, let's say you're in the red zone and you've got Taysom Hill under center, and then let's say you've got Jamal Williams in the backfield, we'll throw Jimmy Graham in just for fun as an inline tight end. We'll say Michael Thomas is on the outside, and then maybe it's a 12 personnel. So you've got maybe Juwan Johnson and maybe Chris Olave on the outside. Each one of these guys is a red zone threat in their own way. Yeah. And so if you have, so if you have like Taysom in the shotgun and then Jamal Williams on his right hip, and then you take that snap and then you have the ability to run that power, that QB power, or you have the ability to fake that QB power and then go over the top to the back of the end zone because you've pulled those linebackers down, or you pulled those safeties down, or whatever. Or you have a fullback that's in, maybe you go 21 personnel, and so you take Juwan Johnson out, but then you put, let's just say, Adam Prentice for now, although he's got competition this offseason, and Jake Vargas. Let's just say it's Adam Prentice, though. You start him out in the slot for no reason, and then motion him across, which you see all the time.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah,
He said the M word. I was about
motion. What's that?
And you motion him across. As he crosses behind Taysom Hill, he snaps the ball. Everybody expects power to the right side, and he's going to follow the fullback. But Jamal Williams goes to the outside, right, to the left side, on the weak side of it all, the back side of the play. And so you have all these options. Or you fake that power, and then you go to somebody in the back of the end zone. Or you just run the damn thing and let Taysom Hill do what he does. And so that's what I really look at.
But look, I'm going to clip that, what you just said.
Clip it.
I'm going to send it to you, and you go to Pete Carmichael and play it for him.
In a presser, bro. Just play it for him. Hey, Pete, can you listen to this?
Can you do that? I
promise you, if I've thought of it, they've thought of it.
Are you sure? Bro? I don't know, bro. I don't know. We watched every game last year on Zoom. I wouldn't see
if they haven't thought of it, it's fine. Just cut me the check. Cut me the check. Just a little check.
Pay me for it.
Yeah, I don't need a salary. I just send me a royalty.
If you just playing the game, just give me a small percentage, and we good. Moving on.
That's it. I'll take 6 figures and I'll be out for life. Don't even worry about it.
No, that's right.
Don't even worry about it.
No, that's right. One thing about this training camp that's been like the story, especially defensively, of this training camp, who is going to win the starting cornerback 2 role? It's a highlight that Ryan and I talked about even before training camp started, and I'm putting Ross Jackson on the spot. I know training camp's not over. I know there's not even preseason games. Who is the week 1 starter opposite Marshawn Lattimore?
I've been saying it from before training camp, and I'll stand by it. It's Paulson Adebo.
Man.
It's Paulson Adebo. And I know people are in love with Alontae Taylor and everything, as well you should. The dude's a dog. I mean, he's outstanding. But look, Paulson Adebo has – and here's what I'll say. Paulson Adebo's outplayed Alontae Taylor so far as the outside corner.
That's big.
But remember what we were just talking about earlier too, right? He's got 1 more year of experience. Alontae Taylor didn't really get a training camp last year because he was dealing with injury. This is kind of his first full training camp, although he left early with hamstring tightness on Thursday. We'll see if on Wednesday. We'll see if he's back out there this weekend. But so there is that gap for Alontae Taylor to close. And this is where I get really excited because I love these competitions.
Yes.
And I know Dennis Allen loves this competition in particular. He drafted Alontae Taylor to compete with Paul Siva, to like wreck him and be like, all right, go out there and get better.
Right.
Not that he needed it, but you wanted to see that push. And so what we've seen so far is Paul Tebow has been outstanding over the course of camp, whether it's one-on-ones, whether it's, in team drills, which I think are more important than the one-on-ones.
Absolutely.
But
I love it.
Yeah. Like when a DB wins a one-on-one though, like there's something to that because it's so weighted against that player.
Yes.
Exactly.
And so there is highlight in that, but I think Paulson's done a really good job so far defending. He's, gotten in the midst of some of those quick slants that they're trying to run to Michael Thomas, being able to knock them away, a la Marshawn Lattimore, who hasn't allowed a single one of those types of catches so far. I think he's got like a couple of catches, maybe one catch that he's allowed in team drills.
It's crazy,
man. He keeps taking away those quick slants, which are super hard to take away. And Paulson Adebo is doing the same thing. Paulson Adebo getting in and, mucking up some of the passing plays and messing up some of the timing, being physical at the line of scrimmage, all the things that you love to see from him. But the good news is either Paulson Adebo runs away with this all throughout camp, which means that he really earns that number one spot, or Alontae Taylor gains enough ground and exceeds the expectation of being able to catch up and pass up Paulson Adebo and therefore earns the starting role on the outside. And either way, in either of those situations, somebody wins the role as opposed to losing the role. And that's how the New Orleans Saints get better at the outside corner opposite Marshawn Lattimore.
Precisely. Exactly. And look, I mean, it speaks to something about Paulson Adebo's just football character, whatever. Because even going back to his rookie year, I'll never forget his first game against the Falcons. He gets burned by, was it Patterson?
Yep, sure was. Cordero.
Was it Cordero? Yeah.
Cordell Patterson. Then he comes back later that year. He picks the ball off.
Last game of the season.
Yeah, picks the ball off, and he totally dominates. So it just speaks to something about his football character. It's like, look, I'm not, don't count me out. I'm going to keep grinding. He, came in last year with the injury, tried to do his best. So, I mean, look, I love to see it, bro. Like, I like me personally, I was rooting for Alontae to win it. But, like, if Adebo wins it, and he really wins it, hey, all I can do is give love and props, man. And it just, like you said, it just makes the whole team better because you have – but then the question goes, who's at nickel? Because it seems to be Roby at that nickel spot.
Yeah, we saw a lot of Alontae Taylor, or we started to see a lot of Alontae in the slot on Wednesday because Bradley Roby was out, which I assume was a veteran day. DA's been really, really transparent about this person was out because of injury, this person left with injury, this person left with injury, and stuff like that. So if he doesn't say anything, we just kind of assume, and we're pretty sure it's veteran rest. And then sometimes we'll ask depending on the player too. Like we always ask about like Ryan Ramczyk and Jimmy Graham and stuff like that. But with Roby, he wasn't there. And so Alontae started to play a lot in the slot. So we got to see 23, 29, and 1 all on the field together.
I need it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's when the hamstring tightness hit. Which really stinks. But you know what I'm saying? So like we finally got it. We were like, oh, here it is.
Here it is.
And then unfortunately. And I get it, like the Saints doing what they did a lot last year, they're doing it again this year, to where somebody walks up and says, hey, my shoulder hurts. They're like, great, go sit down. Like don't make it worse. Don't try to play through it.
Unless it's like you're back and you're the starting quarterback. But
yeah, right. Yeah. Sure. I'm talking about training camp. I'm talking about training camp.
Sorry.
I'm talking about training camp. But so I understand why they're like, okay, well, go get that looked at, go get taken care of, and everything. But I was really looking forward to seeing a lot of Alontae in the slot that day.
Man,
so hopefully we get another opportunity to see that. So when we spoke to Alontae the other day, he kind of expressed that he feels a lot more comfortable in that slot role now. When we talked to him during OTAs, minicamp, stuff like that, he was like, I'm an outside corner. I'm losing a lot in the slot, like all this other stuff. And then this time around, he was like, all right, I feel like I'm losing a lot less, which I know probably doesn't sound like much, but it's progress, right? You're just trying to track the progress as you go through.
Right.
And this is a position the guy's never played before. He played like 40 slot snaps in his entire collegiate career at Tennessee. And then the only time that he played in the slot last year is when he was motioned via the game plan into the slot, but always started out as an outside corner. And so I think that now, as he's kind of getting a little bit more involved in it, he's got, he likes the comfort of having a little bit more help in the middle, likes being more involved in the run game. He loves to hit. So I think that like those things are there. So he's got the want, he's got the wherewithal to be able to get it done. I think the next piece of it is just that, can he develop the requisite, talent to be able to hold that slot position down on a consistent basis, game in and game out.
It's awesome, man. Like, man, we're going through the whole roster at this point.
Yeah.
I guess my last thing, the kicker battle.
Yes.
Can you handicap it at this point, or just got to see how it plays out through the preseason?
Yeah, I think preseason will probably tell us a lot, but I think Will Lutz is still has his comfortable lead there. I think that there is legitimate battle, and right now, if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I think it's Lutz is like 19 of 20 or something like that, and Groupie is like 18 of 19. So it's literally like one kick each that they've missed.
Right.
And the one kick that Will Lutz missed was outdoors, 57 yards. And then the one that Groupie missed was indoors. I think it was like 44 yards or something like that. So that can factor, that might mean something to you too, right? And so I think there is legitimate competition there, but I think that Will Lutz has a very comfortable lead as the incumbent guy. I guess it's like tie goes to the runner, as Dennis Allen said. But I do think too that what we're seeing in terms of Will Lutz's consistency could be being aided by having that competition. So I think the goal and the purpose of the competition is still showing.
I have one more Saints related, and then I have another one that's completely not Saints related because I think our listeners want to hear it. But my last Saints related one is just the conclusion in regards to Dennis Allen's head coaching record. He hasn't had a winning season as a head coach. Can this team, with its talent and its depth, potentially overcome any shortcomings that they may have at head coach to be a playoff team?
I think that if there is a team that is going to give them the best chance at that, and I'll be honest, let me just say it straight up. I think that this team gives Dennis Allen his best chance of finally getting that winning season.
Yes.
And I don't really even mean that this would be the last team that gives him the opportunity. Therefore, it's the best chance that he's got. I mean, if you look at the teams that he's had in the past and you look at this team is a better team, I think, on paper. Sorry to do the on paper thing to you.
Hashtag on paper.
Yeah, hashtag on paper. But we have to acknowledge that we're talking about on paper, we're not talking about on field yet. Right. And so, but I do think that this team with a defense that let's pull it back a little bit and say should be top 10 in the NFL, and a quarterback that he trusts, a quarterback that likes to be aggressive, a quarterback that wants to go out there and wants to be put on the field. Like if you get the option of a 4th and 1 from your own 30 with Derek Carr as your quarterback, Derek Carr is going to do everything he can to go out there and try to get that 1 yard, even if he's got to go and get it himself. So he will be kind of like what we used to see with Drew, where he would fight to be on the field. With Russell Wilson, where he fights to be on the field. Tom Brady fighting to be on the field. Derek Carr has that same thing. It's not to say that Jameis doesn't, but I do think that it's a similar, or it's a small key difference between Derek Carr and maybe some of the other quarterbacks that they have seen. Andy Dalton wasn't about to fight for a 4th and 1. That wasn't about to happen. What was he going to do?
What? No, I'm
good. He's like, yeah, go ahead, Will. That's all you, bro. That's all you.
Go with play. I'm going to run the play.
You got it. Go with God. Y'all are good. 4th and 1. Have fun. But like Derek Carr's going to fight to be on the field for that. So I do think that creates a little bit of aggression.
Saints related. Your journey. If you just give our listeners who's just inspired, that what you've been able to do in your career, what you've been able to become, being a credentialed member of the media covering the Saints, living in New Orleans, you lived in California, you've done things in the entertainment industry. What is the very quick, what are those things we used to do? Cliff notes. Kids don't even know what Cliff Notes are anymore. They're like, what is that? What is the Cliff Notes Ross Jackson story of how you've been able to become and accomplish what you have thus far in your career?
Yeah. All right. I'll do my best here. And thank you for this question. It's so nice to just be asked about myself. I was am a born and raised New Orleanian that had a passion for sports where opportunity never met the passion. Mm-hmm. And then I eventually found a space where opportunity and passion did meet. That was in the entertainment industry when I worked in theater. But even as I was working in theater and I was doing things like, repertory theater and, regional theaters and smaller stuff when I was living in Arkansas at the time, post Katrina, because I got pushed out by Katrina. When I went to grad school for theater and for stage management, which was my role, I didn't act, but I did a lot of the backstage stuff. I was producerial. Right. And so, even when going to grad school, I went to grad school out in California with this little thing in the back of my mind going, all right, well, if you get an opportunity to like PA for ESPN, LA or something like that, or Fox Sports in LA or something like that, like that's what you're actually going to go and do. You're going to leave this theater stuff behind. And that never happened. But Broadway did, off-Broadway did, national tours did. I got to do some incredible stuff and work with some incredible people. It's one of the reasons why I have all the patience that I have, because I've watched the greatest actors fail over and over and over and over again until they don't fail anymore. Man. So maybe that's a part of where like my patience comes in from watching practices and like tracking progress and stuff like that. And then I got an opportunity, man. Like there was one guy, Tyler McClatchy, who I owe everything to, wrote something on the New Orleans Saints subreddit about how he wanted to start a blog and needed some writers. And there was a particular person in that group that said, you'll never find good people for free. So I said, to hell with you. I'm good and I'll do it for free. And I did it and I fell in love with it. My first piece that I ever wrote was about how the Saints rebirth kind of aligned with my own. Of coming out of homelessness and, Katrina, because I was homeless before Katrina. And then I don't know if there's such thing as mega homeless, but then I was mega homeless after Katrina. And then when things started to go right for me and my mom, things started going right for New Orleans and Steve Gleason and all these other things. And so even when I wasn't in New Orleans, I was running on the same trajectory as New Orleans. And so it gave me an opportunity as a writer, which I did a little bit of journalism in college, but nothing important. That was my opportunity to be able to reconnect with my city while I was in California, as you mentioned. And then started doing some podcasting with them. And then one day, David Locke, who's the founder, CEO, president, whatever, of Locked On, he hates all of those titles, so I never know what to call him. And so he called me up one day and said, hey, would you be willing to do what you do, but do it 5 days a week? And like we were talking about before we started recording, I just say yes to stuff. Right. And then either it works or it doesn't work. Like if it doesn't work, it's not the end of my life. Right. And turns out it wasn't the end of my life, but it was the beginning of a whole new life. It gave me the opportunity to be able to come home. I'm in this beautiful house. Like this is my first night in this new house. This is the first time I've lived in a house for 20 years. I've lived in trailers and cars and apartments. You know what I mean? And, yeah, I mean, that's the journey. And as far as I'm concerned, it's only the beginning.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I'm grateful I get to share it with y'all.
Bro, like, I see you, like, I watch you, and I'm like, this dude has so far to go, he doesn't even realize it yet. Like, he doesn't even realize it yet, man. It's crazy.
Thank y'all, man. I really appreciate it.
Did you go to NOCA when you were in New Orleans? Like in high school and stuff? Did you do NOCA?
No, I didn't make it to high school. Katrina. So I dropped out of school when I was 13 after my dad left.
Oh, okay.
So I wasn't in school. And then once Katrina came through and everything, that ended up pushing us out. I got back into school after Katrina because they were just letting people in school. They were just like, take this placement test, whatever, like just come in. And then so I just like took a placement test and I got back in. But I was a middle school dropout, man. Like I didn't finish learning how to read until I was in college.
Like that just like it just goes to like, and this is just a life lesson. This is like beyond football, beyond anything. Like it doesn't have to be the end of your story. Like if you're listening to this, if you're going through a hard time, it could be whatever it is, right? Homelessness, addiction, whatever it is that you're experiencing in your personal life, it does not have to be like the end of your story. Like the story can continue. And, Ross is just an inspiration and like an actual, like a testament to that. And it's amazing, man. Like to hear your story, to hear you being so open and honest with us, it's a privilege. It's an honor for you to, tell it to us and also tell it to our listeners on our podcast. We talked about it at the beginning of just how awesome this moment is of like all the melatonin on this podcast. And we're talking about the Saints. We're laughing, we're having fun. And it's wild, man. It's a wild thing, and we are so grateful and thankful that you came on and chopped it up with us. And like, we have to make this a more regular thing. Like, it can't be like 3+ years where this is the first time that it's happening.
Don't do Ross that, bro. Ross gonna be looking like that Popeyes lady, man. Just like, I need a break, man. Like, come on, man.
I'm fighting for my life.
But when we'll be out there in November for the Bears meetup, man, please know that the invitation for you to meet us at the meetup and just chop it up with us as we party before the Bears game, it's an open invitation, man.
Thank you, man.
We'd love to have you there, and and thank you for for supporting us. Like, I know numerous people, they've said that they came to our podcast because it was a mention that you said on your podcast. One of our
all the time
one of our biggest supporters, London. We had the West Coast brunch at Mastro's last weekend.
Yep.
And we were kind of going around the table of how everyone kind of came up with our podcast. And London said it was because of Ross. Like, he had said something about STP on his pod, and he gave us a chance. And now he was sitting at the table with us, and London's like extended family. He was from Hawaii, and now he's
London's dope.
Yeah, London's a cool ass dude. But no, truly from the bottom of our hearts, man. Like thank you for supporting us, and thank you for giving us a little shout out and love here and there, and it means the world to us. Like, truly,
absolutely.
It's a pleasure, guys. Like, just I don't know. I'm at a loss for words about like how meaningful all this is to me at the moment, but like. The way that I've always seen it is there's nothing worth having if you can't share it. But at the same time, it's worth being selective about where you share.
Absolutely.
And y'all, it was never a question. It was never a question. Like, I will always support. So I appreciate y'all, man. No,
man, we thank y'all. Thank you for coming on. Anyone watching or listening, I'll be like, y'all just got a treat. Like, I don't know how else we can say it. Like, y'all just got a treat.
If you didn't pay attention to anything from training camp and you just listen to this, you good. Like, you ain't got to follow no tweets. You don't have to read no articles. Bro. Good.
Please read Ross's and John's articles. Give them the click.
Read them.
Please don't listen to this so much. Like, come on, bro. But for real, Ross, thank you for coming on, man. We got to have you on sometime during the regular season. You have to come through at our meetup. We'll give you the information later. We can't put that on the airways. You have too many people popping up that ain't supposed to be there. But no, we appreciate it, man. Thank y'all for listening. Check out Ross on Locked On Saints. He does like daily shows. Check out his work in terms of his articles on Sports Illustrated. Also check out John Hendricks' work on Sports Illustrated. Yes. John, super cool ass dude, dope as hell. We appreciate y'all. We'll let you go now. Thank you so much. We'll be back next week. And with that, we're out.
Peace.
Got questions? O'Reilly Auto Parts has answers. Need a pro you can trust? We've got that too. No matter what you need, our professional parts people have the training and expertise to help you do things right. Deep automotive knowledge. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.